Okay, let's start this again.
Cheers, everybody.
Welcome.
Welcome to another episode of Bourbonandbooze, where we try the wonderful world of alcohol. And today we are doing whiskey. It's a Whiskey Thursday, and we are looking at Canadian whiskey. This is our first Canadian whiskey from our Advent calendar, so we have 2 more to go. We are nearing the tail end of doing the reviews of what we had in our Advent calendar from December 21 or 20. So this is a Canadian whiskey. It's actually imported and distilled in Kentucky. So it's going to be distilled by a Kentucky company called the Founders Company in Canada, and then brought down and bottled in Kentucky. I hate saying this because you always want to correct me, but Louisville.
And if you're not familiar with an Advent calendar, that's like 24 days of
something. Right, to celebrate the holiday season.
And for us, it was booze.
Booze. Can't go wrong with booze. We did one last year that we bought. This year we decided to make it. So this is a Canadian whiskey at 40% or 80 proof. Oh, you already got it. And it runs at $19.99, so not a very high-end Canadian whiskey. No age statement. So when I'm pouring, you can talk. You can talk to the company.
All right, I'm just gonna say, with our Advent calendar, I didn't really find anything bad.
No.
You found two
non-whiskeys.
But I kind of like the ones that you didn't like.
Mm-hmm. So at $19.99, this is just a penny shy of being a 3-barrel. So this is a 4-barrel. 4-barrel on cost. So let's go ahead and do our review. Interesting. What is that?
It has a very different smell to it. And I got the wheel here and I can't even say anything on.
Interesting. Okay. So, assume that, I don't know what you're doing. But, okay. After I deciphered your scribble. So we're the same across the board. It's a 4 for cost at $19.99. Aroma, we each give it a 3.
I gave it a aroma. I gave it a question mark.
Oh, is that a question mark?
Yeah, it's got an aroma that I can't really.
I find it a little earthy. A hints of rye and pepper, a tiny bit of mint, but that oddness to me is reminds me of cornmeal, like cornmeal breading for
Fish.
Okay, fish or chicken or something. Fried cornmeal. That's what it reminds me of.
Yeah, it threw me for a loop.
It's not a bad aroma. It's unique and
yeah.
odd. For flavor, we each give it a 3. I hit the flavors of vanilla, rye, pepper, but very subtle. Hints of all of it. It's a very subtle flavor. Now, most Canadian whiskeys are blended.
Yeah.
Not all, but most are. So the blending profile of this is probably quite a few different blends.
Well, and
maybe even into the dozens or more.
it used to be that to be Canadian whiskey.
We've had this conversation before.
But there might be some people who haven't seen this before. You used to have, to be a Canadian whiskey, it had to be blended. But that changed in the last 10 years or so.
The rule about Canadian whiskey being blended, it's more of a myth than an actual rule because the percentage of blend was 4%, so it wasn't truly a blended.
Okay.
So it's just one of those myths that came down when Canadian whiskey kind of filled the void after the collapse of the whiskey extravaganza, so to speak, from Prohibition. Canadian whiskey just found it more advantageous to do blends than to do straight whiskeys or single malts. So that's kind of what the myth came down to. For bite, no real bite. I gave it a 3. You gave it a 3. Slight lingering, but not bad. But it's definitely not smooth, so that's why we're giving it a 3. So this gives us a 13 points. This is just a hair over a 3, so it's a 3. It's a 3-barrel whiskey. I'm not really disappointed with Canadian whiskeys. I'm exploring Canadian whiskeys a lot more. I'm reading this great book on Canadian whiskey, the history of all the different companies and how they came up with stuff and the rules and regulations. It's just a really one of the most informative books I've ever read. I really enjoy it. I'm about halfway through. And so I was really excited to do Canadian whiskeys, and we have some other ones. We have quite a few Canadian whiskeys. But this one is probably on the lower end of the whiskeys. Yeah. It's not bad. I mean...
No, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
But I want to ask you, you're reading this book, and a lot of the Canadian whiskey got more better, because I'm trying to figure out we've done quite a few episodes, but with the Prohibition and how Prohibition in the U.S. made Canadian whiskey more prominent in the market and everything.
Well, during Prohibition was also somewhat of the collapse of the Scotch too. So Canadian whiskey was really one of the predominantly only available whiskeys around the world. Because Irish whiskey had already collapsed down to 3 distilleries. Scottish whiskey was really because of 1800s taxation laws. And so Canadian whiskey filled that void. And then once Irish whiskey came back recently, but when Scottish whiskey started filling the void of the loss of American whiskey from Prohibition, it slowly overtook Canadian whiskey. And of course, the biggest Canadian whiskey company out there, which is no longer around, is Seagram's. They were the dominant whiskey producers in the world. And so once they kind of disappeared, then Canadian whiskey completely collapsed. And it's coming back pretty strong.
You can see a big wall of Seagram's.
Well, the company's name still is there, but they're not there. MGP bought Seagram's distillery and all of their stock. So there's some really old sourced whiskeys from MGP, 25, 30-year-old whiskeys that were actually distilled under Seagram that MGP bought.
Because one of the biggest drinks that you think about is 7 and 7, the Seagram's.
Yeah, the brand never disappeared. The company did. I think it filed for bankruptcy or something. So there you go. 3 on Copper Creek. This was a hard one to find. It's not readily available everywhere. I think we got this at a big box store, but I've never seen it in a regular liquor store. And it was a little difficult to find some information online. So if you can find Copper Creek, give it a try. It's an average Canadian whiskey. It's got a unique aroma profile, so maybe if you've had it, you can give us your own kind of aroma notes for us. Maybe there's something that you pick up that we don't, and you'll just spark our memory. Let us know. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe. Check out Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and merchandise. And check out tomorrow's episode of Mad Cocktails with Cody. And remember, there's no bad whiskey. There's only good whiskey and great whiskey. And this is pretty
Not
good
too
whiskey.
bad.
It's not
It's
bad.
good.
It's a 3.
Later.
Cheers.